So I watched this as a double feature with the original Nosferatu, and it was kind of fascinating watching these back to back. If you weren't already aware, this is a remake of a 102-year-old silent film that Robert Eggers has been obsessed with since he was 9 years old. When he was 17, he directed a stage version of Nosferatu, and 10 years ago, he began working on this film in what was supposed to be his second feature. Now it's finally once again made its way to the big screen, and it is a fascinating take on this story. But what is Nosferatu? Well, essentially, it's a very early Dracula ripoff, but it's about a newlywed man named Thomas who works as an estate agent, and he gets sent to Transylvania to confirm the sale of a house to the mysterious Count Orlok. But his new wife, who's been having really weird dreams, senses something isn't right and begs him not to go. The original is a 90-minute silent film. The only dialogue is through insert cards, so obviously with a full sound remake, there's a lot of space to further explore the characters and the story. And if you haven't seen the original, I would actually recommend watching that one first, because it's almost like a mini film school watching these back to back, seeing how Eggers takes the original and expands on it. The main plot beats are essentially exactly the same, especially at the start, but the way Eggers frames these adds so much depth to the story. That mainly comes with the focus on Lily Rose Depp's character Ellen. In the original, she's much more of a side character, but here she's really the protagonist. Nosferatu's always featured Orlok's obsession with Ellen, but this film makes it much more of a relationship, and it just unlocks like completely new places for this film to go and new ways to interpret this story. And what I think is really interesting about this focus is that anytime a film is made, especially when it's a remake, there's always that question of why now? Why make this now? And you can make the argument that they have better special effects, they can shoot on real locations, do a lot of things that they couldn't have done in 1922 or even in 1979. Which is true, but this one has the perspective of a woman who's a victim of the time period she was born into, and I think that's a perspective we're far more sympathetic to today than the 1920s or even the 1970s. And it fits so naturally within the story, you could almost overlook how interesting a choice it is. And every aspect of that is enhanced with how he uses the camera in this film. The way he shoots is nothing short of spectacular. Robert Eggers does not shoot coverage. This was not a film that was constructed in the edit. There was a very exact vision that he was going for in this. He'll shoot entire scenes in just one take, and it's not done in a flashy way or a way that you're really supposed to notice. It's just about keeping all of the actors in frame so that they can all bounce off of each other. He rarely cuts to a close-up. He lets the actor's performance do all the work, and because he uses those close-ups so sparingly, it means when he does, it really has an impact. The blocking of it is just masterful, and I really wish more films were shot in this way. That said, the one downside of shooting this way, while it's great to get every actor's performance in the wide, it does give them a lot less wiggle room in the edit. Because he hasn't just shot, reverse shot, there's no way to trim the scenes down, so I do think the pacing of the film suffers a little bit. There's a points where it does start to feel a little bit slow, but even with that, I would rather have more films with some pacing issues if they were shot like this. One of the biggest departures from the original is in the design of Count Orlok himself. Because the original Max Schreck design is so iconic and recognised, it'd be really hard to top it. And interestingly, in the marketing for this one, unlike a lot of other horror franchises, they consciously did not reveal the look of Count Orlok ahead of time. In fact, one of their main posters makes a real point of not showing what he looks like. And I really love this because it means that the character and the audience get the same surprise whenever Orlok is revealed for the first time. The disadvantage with that is if you're already familiar with Max Schreck's look and design, that means that you're coming into this with a certain level of baggage and expectation. And I have to admit, my initial reaction, I was a bit unsure because I just love how that original looks, and this version is a very clear visual departure from that. But now, having sat with the film, even though I do think I slightly prefer the visual design of the original, I think the version they've gone for in this film works better for the movie this is as a whole. And the performance Bill Skarsgård gives is absolutely phenomenal. The man completely disappears, and he's once again done the impossible of making a horror icon his own. The rest of the cast is also great. Willem Dafoe continues to be the best thing ever. Nicholas Hoult is great. Lily Rose Depp really is the standout though. She shows off her acting chops in a way that I think has been really surprising to most people. There's been a lot of complaints online about Nepo babies and the unfair advantages that they have, but it's clear here from this performance that she is not here just because of her name. There's ways that she moves her body in really contorted ways while delivering dialogue, and I genuinely thought they must have used visual effects to enhance some of it, but apparently she was just doing all of that with her body. It's very, very impressive because it just looked so unnatural. And because the whole movie really has her character as the emotional center of the film, the whole thing really is resting on her performance, and she absolutely delivers. There's a lot of other ways that this film expands and deepens what was there in the original film, but I also think it doesn't replace the original movie in any way or invalidate it. Because the original film was an expressionist movie, it was part of the German expressionist movement, there's a lot of things that it does and is able to get away with that I don't think would work if they were adapted into a modern version. And there's lots of little moments where Eggers recreates moments from the original and puts his own spin on it, and there's others that I think he wisely avoids doing because they wouldn't work in this version. So this film got released on Christmas Day in the US, and I saw a lot of people online talk about how this was effective counter-programming. But, fun fact, historically there have been more ghost stories played at Christmas time on television than at Halloween. And when you think about it, the most famous Christmas story of all time is a ghost story, so vampires aren't too far a jump. And so I think that December was actually the perfect time to release this movie, especially because this version is set during winter, there's even a Christmas tree in it. And that makes me really annoyed that it was only the United States that got this over Christmas. The rest of us had to wait until January. But even with that, I'm glad I got to see this on the big screen at all. I thought this adaptation was absolutely fantastic. If you've seen it, let me know what you thought of Nosferatu in the comments. Did you prefer this? Did you prefer the original? And if you want to make sure that you don't miss anything coming up on the channel, make sure to subscribe.